Hey everybody, I'm your host Norene, and I have my great co-host with me, Donna Raymond. And we want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. And we have a fabulous guest with us tonight, Kim Quarterman. Has written a book, Fallen Angels. I want to welcome Kim to our show. And Kim, thank you so much for joining us. And now, Kim, what I want to know is your background and how you got involved in this.
Okay. Years and years ago, I went to Bible college, and I was consequently in the Air Force, but went into business rather than going into a particular ministerial type of thing. And I worked with homeless people, drug addicts, and so forth, and did that for about 8 years. But I spent most of my life in business. I owned several businesses. In the latter years, I worked in franchising and got into sort of an interesting little facet of things where I wrote legal forms. And I did that for a couple of years. And then I've sort of semi-retired, but I felt like a couple of years ago that I should sort of pack up shop, and we bought a motorhome. And I've been working on let's call it the project, for about 20 years, and gathering notes and writing pages here and there and putting them in a folder. And when I got up into North Carolina, I, of course, had time, and I started putting together this stuff, but I was by no means sure that I was going to try to put it into a book and publish it. The type of information in the book, not everybody is quite ready to hear it, you might say, and it was consequently during a walk one night that really propelled me to go ahead and decide to write this book.
And you, now where did you get your information from on writing this book?
Well, I'd like to say that often when people ask me that, I will explain to them that first of all, it comes out of what we call the typical Bible, the 66 books of the canon. In addition to that, Jewish historical literature. For instance, there's a text called First Enoch,
Right.
Jubilees,
Right.
the Book of Adam and Eve, Yasha. Then you've got historians like Josephus. Even Caesar wrote some things that were interesting during that period of time. But just a conglomeration of all of those things that gave color to what I call the biblical narrative. And the biblical narrative to most people is just astonishing. They've just really not heard it the way it really is. And it sort of even shocks them.
Now I'm going to hold up your book for everybody to see. This is the book, Fallen Angels, Giants, UFO Encounters, and the New World. Can you all see that? Oh yeah, that looks good. Okay. So in your book, you start talking about the Bible and the Hebrews, and then you talk about Adam and Eve, which we've talked about before.
Right.
And we had a question a while back that God created Adam in his own image, but yet a female. How did he create the female? I know he created it from the rib of Adam, but that the female is not in his own image.
Why not?
Is he both female and male?
I think if you accept the fact that God created Adam and breathed the breath of life into Adam, then I think the principle is that since Eve was taken from Adam's rib, she also would have been in the image of God. just as a seed, all seeds, fruits, trees, when they multiply like themselves.
So your belief is that God made Adam? Is that your belief?
Certainly.
Okay.
And so you wrote this book solely for the purpose of awakening the world from its slumber. Slumber of what, Kim?
Well, I think that the world, particularly we as Americans today, are literally asleep. And by that, let me sort of come into the story this way. Most of the people that I talk to or that I run into, if you say something to them along the lines of that we're in the latter days or we're in end times, which is sort of a biblical cliche, meaning that it's not long before the Lord returns, they'll usually agree with you. But the problem is that, in my mind anyway, is the problem is standing outside your house when a thunderstorm is coming up and you see the clouds and you see the thunder and you start seeing the lightning, but you're too stupid to go indoors. And that's the way I see Americans, particularly in the world at large, is that we're seeing all of these signs. I particularly want to talk about one particular sign, but as we're seeing these things, we're standing around outside scratching our head, and we're not making any preparations spiritually, financially, or any other way to the troubles that are coming on this earth.
So what are the troubles that are coming on this earth?
Well, number one, we're in a time that is reminiscent of Genesis, the 6th chapter. The disciples came to Christ and they asked him, they said, tell us, what will it be like when you return? What will those days be like? Now, one of the problems, and we don't think about who he was talking to, when he was talking to them, and what they thought when he said something. So having said all of that, in the 24th chapter of Matthew, and that's the most well-known chapter of the Gospel, is talking about the latter days, he states that the days of his return shall be, it's the 37th, 37th verse, and he says that, but as the days of Noah were, so shall the Son, also the coming of the Son of Man be. And most people read that and continue to read over it, and it talks about they'll be marrying and giving in marriage and this kind of thing. But they don't stop and ask themselves, okay, what was going on in the days of Noah? And they don't flip back to the beginning of the Bible, to the book of Genesis, and find out what was particularly going on during those days, because that's also happening now. And that's what I mean by far, that the world is asleep. The same things that were happening in Genesis, the 6th chapter, and it's astounding actually. But to give you the short version of it, angels were coming down and mating with women, and they were producing what in the Hebrew are called the Nephilim, giants. And this same thing is what Christ is referring to will go on again in the latter days just before his return. And I have studied the UFO abduction phenomenon. And by all metrics, it's the same thing that was happening in Genesis, but just under a different name. It just looks different.
Okay, now Nephilim, excuse me, are giants. Now, are you talking about, giants like 25 feet tall?
They certainly can be, or even taller. My feeling is that there has been, if you want to say, use the word progress, I think there has been some progress that these fallen angels have made toward making Nephilim more human looking. but I have actually seen one that was, say, half animal, half human.
You actually saw one?
Yes, I did. That's where the story I left off earlier about what made me decide to go ahead and put all this together and publish it.
When and where did this all happen?
It's been within the last couple of years that I was up in North Carolina in the mountains, and we were renting a chalet up on the top of a mountain, and we had a driveway that sort of curled and slithered on down toward the mountain. And I was up about 3 o'clock in the morning writing, and I thought, well, it's time to go to bed, and I've got a dog named Star, and I really didn't want her to wake me up at daylight wanting to go out, so I opened the door and said, Star, come on, let's go out. Well, she didn't want to go, which is very unlike her. She's always ready to go outside. And so I almost literally had to drag her out there, and I picked up a flashlight, which is more like a powerful lantern type of flashlight, and brought it with me. And while she's outside taking care of business, I'm just flashing this flashlight down the driveway looking around. And I spot, with a flashlight, this creature standing beside a tree. And I don't want to be like the fisherman that tells the story, and every time he tells it, the fish gets bigger. But this thing was tall, and it had the face of a wolf, but the hairy body of a man. And it was standing on 2 feet looking at me. And, it turned and looked a little bit in one direction, turned and looked a little bit in another. And I decided the best thing to do was turn around and walk back in the house. So I did. But I knew that what it was because, I'd been studying, putting this stuff together for a number of years. And, when you start talking about hybrids and giants and fallen angels mating with women and even with animals, people roll their eyes and like, oh, UFO, oh, okay, you've seen a UFO, okay, it's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. But I decided if I could run into something like this in the woods and mountains of North Carolina, the time was to write about it because it was much more common than I had thought.
We're taking this in. Sorry.
Wow. Oh my God. I never heard anybody ever say that before. There's just one thing I want to ask you though. In your book, you talk about Lucifer, who wasn't bad in the beginning, and the fallen angels were those that followed him. But he lived on another planet. I never heard that before. Planet Rahab. He lived on a planet.
So are you saying that these angels and who you're talking about, that they're aliens and they're not what we always thought them to be?
Right. I don't want to, the script here could go 2 ways, but yes, let me clarify this. I do not believe in aliens from other galaxies. I believe they are fallen angels and demonic beings. But now to go back and answer Norene's question, my book details both what's happening presently, and then it goes back even before the beginning of time and talks about what was going on then. And in the very, very beginning of all things, Lucifer evidently was involved in trade or commerce between planets, solar systems, galaxies perhaps. And it seems like from my study of scripture and what we know about planetary physics, that what we call today the asteroid belt is most probably, and thought by most scientists, to be an exploded planet. And the Bible alludes to a planet by the name of Rahab. But what we do know for sure is that Lucifer was over commerce before he actually fell.
So it's, you know, I've never read the Bible, and I know there are, some of our viewers have. So you mean in the Bible they actually talk about a planet?
It uses the reference that's used as stones of fire, but what it's referring to, what it means, is a planet.
Do you, okay, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you said you don't believe in aliens from other planets, but do you think that we are aliens?
Explain to me what you mean by that.
Okay, do you think that we're aliens? You know, that we're aliens?
With some of the theories about out there in this, what you're talking about is that aliens from other galaxies, other cultures, I'll say, have come here, and we were transported here as either slaves or what was the other? So that's what.
Astronaut theory.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
So these are people who are being abducted now. You're saying it from way back in the Bible to now is that it's repeating itself, but these are the fallen angels and not aliens like many people say. So these grays that people are seeing, these are angels.
These are fallen angels and demonic beings that are working on their behalf. Yes, you are correct. It's the same phenomena that was going on in Genesis.
Wow, sorry, we're putting. You're the first person we've had on, and we've had a couple on that they're kind of on one theory, and you're coming from a very biblical
Worldview.
Yeah. So this is I'm trying to process this.
Well, the Genesis chapter 6. There's not total agreement in Christendom as concerning who the violators, for instance, here were. But it's pretty clear to me in the Hebrew and the text structure of the sentences. When I read this to you, it says that the sons of God, and in the Hebrew that's the Beni Ha-Elohim, and it's only used of angels, saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. Sounds just like the UFO abduction phenomenon, where these UFO nauts or whatever are choosing and abducting women at their own choosing. I saw a poll recently on Facebook where 23 million Americans, and most of those are women, were claiming they had been abducted. The research shows that those who are abducted are not only abducted once, but twice. And that in all of these abduction phenomena, the reproductive organs are investigated. They're usually abducted a second time, and sometimes things are removed from them. Sometimes they're shown these things. I've actually talked, and this has been since I've written the book, because I've had a chance to talk to people in other countries and our country as well, where some of these abductees, these women, I talked to one recently, swore she had not been with a man in 5 years, but she was abducted and became pregnant and ended up aborting the child, but it was such a horrible looking thing, she was never even allowed to see it.
And where's this lady from?
This particular lady lived in Canada.
Did she? Okay. Well, is there any proof of it? I mean, did they take a picture of it or anything, or did they maybe put it in some liquid to preserve it?
No, I only have her testimony on that, but there are many recorded testimonies of the same type of situation. It's just the only one I personally knew of recently.
Wow, had you heard that before?
No.
No, me either. Interesting, very interesting. And then you're saying that they are walking among us.
Well, let me clarify this. I believe that fallen angels are walking among us today, yes. I also believe that there are these hybrids, these Nephilim, that are also among us today. I don't know how many exactly that is, and I'm not sure exactly what all of them look like. I think some look more human than others.
And those are the giants.
Just the regular.
And in the Old Testament, and in the King James, the word Nephilim is translated as giants, yes. Now, it is my thought that this is something that the fallen angels have been working on for thousands of years to make these giants more human-like. I think that's an agenda there that fits into the New World Order.
So are these fallen angels, are these hybrids, are they here for the benefit or the detriment of humanity?
A fallen angel is, there's nothing good there. It's all corruption. They don't seek anything but their own will. Like here in Genesis, the 6th chapter, they're virtually taking women and raping them, producing giants. These women could not have brought these giants to full term. It would just literally ripped them apart.
But Kim, can I? But where are these giants?
Some of them are what people call Sasquatch or Bigfeet. That's the type of thing that I saw.
So that really and okay now
What? What?
Not all of it.
So you're telling me that Bigfoot and these creatures out, or these beings that are out in the woods, these are the I can't even say it. Nephilim?
That's close enough, yeah.
So so who else is out there besides there's Bigfoot? There's that. Who else are tall monsters?
I have
Boggy
no
Creek
idea.
monster.
Well, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, some of those, like the Owl Man, the Goat Man, and some of these could possibly also be Nephilim. What gets really interesting in this is, let me give you my website address. I think you already have it, but for your listeners, it's fallenangelstoday.com. And on one of the pages on there, I've got a picture of a North Korean. And it's not a good picture because I had to take it off the web, but it was originally taken by the Associated Press during Kim Jong II's funeral. And this North Korean soldier is standing there, and he is twice the height of any other North Korean.
I've seen that. I've seen that.
That's 10 feet tall. That's not a basketball player.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Okay. That's a tall man.
Yeah, it's a tall man.
No, they don't grow them that tall.
No,
They're
usually little people.
Oh, Lordy. Okay.
Wow. So that guy just showed up at the funeral.
Right.
Yeah.
So this gives us a little bit of hint. Now, in reading my book, you'll find out that I don't go into all the small conspiracy theories. I bring out a large conspiracy theory dealing with fallen angels moving the world into a new world order, which is not good.
But now you also talk about other dimensions.
Right? If you don't mind, let me finish.
Oh
this
yeah,
one.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Right. Back in the time of Genesis, when these angels were mating with the daughters of Adam and these Nephilim were being created, some of this extra historical literature that I mentioned in the beginning, First Enoch, for instance, also brings in some very interesting points. It says that these fallen angels taught mankind forbidden arts. And some of those arts were the arts of war. And some of the other things that they taught them sound very much like what we might call today genetics. So there's a lot of talk on the web, about underground bases, about
Right.
these secret places where these things are happening. I don't know about all of that, but here's what I suspect, and from the research I've done, is what's coming out is this, that I believe these fallen angels who called themselves aliens, which is nothing new, they've done that for thousands of years. They showed up in Mesoamerica and called themselves star gods. I believe have presented themselves to some of the governments of the world as aliens and have provided technology. And back in the days of Genesis, this is another word we could have used, that they taught mankind technology. I think that the same carrot is used today, and that the governments of the world have been involved in something that's clandestine. And when we saw this North Korean that was maybe 10 feet tall, we got a little bit of a look at what's been going on behind the scenes.
Mm.
Now, in the days of Genesis, some of these giants were 150 feet tall. Well, that's naturally not going to quite go over in the 21st century. So, like I said, I think there has been made progress toward making these things more human looking so that they fit into an agenda.
So has
Yeah.
anybody ever, so this Korean fellow who was 10 feet tall, I've only seen that one picture, and has anybody else gone out to seek out other of these tall people in Korea?
Well, across the web, there are undocumented photos that you can find of skeletons and different stories of artifacts that have been found. And I don't put too much of that on my website at all. And the reason I posted that one picture is you can't get more authoritative than the Associated Press. That's just, that's a picture that's not been doctored or photoshopped, it's beyond, the credibility of those people is beyond question. But, there are stuff out there. It's just a matter of weeding through what is false and what isn't.
Yeah, because I've seen those pictures of these giants that they've so-called dug up, and some people say they were Photoshop pictures, and so you don't know if it's true or not.
Right, and some of them, of course, have been. And that's the reason I tend to stay away from that.
Now, yeah, okay, now, can we talk about the other, you believe in,
New Order.
oh, no, wait a minute,
We don't have to
dimensions.
go?
Yeah, we will.
Oh.
The dimensions. Now, you talk about in your book about, there are many dimensions, and you say there are probably 10 dimensions.
I would probably say now with what they call the M theory, there actually may be 11 dimensions. But 10 has been what's been standard, maybe the 11th one, sort of holding them together. But this is typically called string theory.
Okay, and how did you get your information on these 10 dimensions?
That's general, that's what they call string theory. You have your theory of relativity, which deals with large bodies of the universe and so forth, by Einstein. Then you have quantum physics, which deals with small particles and how they interact with one another. And scientists have thought or searched rather for years for a theory of everything, something that tied together relativity and quantum mechanics. And in recent years, in the last 10 years, they've come up with what they call string theory. And behind string theory is 10 dimensions, and recently what they call M theory, which is an interlocking 11th dimension that sort of makes all of this work together. It's standard, pretty complex physics, and I don't even grasp all of this myself. But I do grasp the fact that the Bible talks about another dimension of spirituality. And we live in a three-dimensional world, and the Bible tells us about another dimension. And in physical science now is telling us that there are many other dimensions. And that's what I bring out in the book.
Okay.
So what are these dimensions? I mean, what are they?
Well, we don't know, and even the physicists don't know what they all are, other than that they probably all take up the same space at the same time. And if you think about the fact that it says in the beginning God or Elohim created the heavens and the earth, we look out, with our eyes and our ears, and we think, oh, heavens and earth, and we see all these stars. But in reality, he created multiple dimensions that sort of enfold upon one another. So creation is so great, it even is beyond what we're even capable at this moment of even theorizing.
So do you think that when we die, we go into another dimension?
Certainly I think we do, yes.
And do you think also that Bigfoot and some of these other hairy, tall guys are also coming from another dimension?
Right. What the Bible tells us and has told us for eons is that there is a spiritual dimension, that mankind is a creature which has a spirit, and when we die, the Bible says that we either go to be with Christ, which we could refer to as the heavenly part of the spiritual realm, and then there's also another part of the spiritual realm which we normally would call hell, and then there's something that's neither one. There are beings, fallen angels, and demonic identities which are different, which occupy part of this space in this spiritual realm. And that's why, for instance, a UFO can show up on radar, it can be tracked, it can burn, it can leave radiation signs, it can go 21,000 miles an hour and make a right-hand turn, it can defy all of the laws of physics. You can be looking at it and it disappears. Well, it's trans-dimensional. It comes from this other dimension, the spiritual realm or the spiritual dimension. And there are other beings there, like demonic beings. But these fallen angels, when they come back and forth, sometimes they do so with quite a lot of physical phenomena. Other times there may not be any at all.
So Angelo wants to know, do you believe in a parallel world?
Now, can you define that?
Can you define that, Angelo? He's one of the viewers.
Mm-hmm. Immediately science fiction comes to my mind when somebody asks that, and I'm not sure what they're asking when they say that.
Well, Angelo says it's in the Bible.
About parallel worlds.
About the parallel worlds.
Where is it in the Bible, Angela?
Go ahead, Kim.
I can tell you what I do know, what comes to mind when I hear that.
Oh, wait a minute. I can't pronounce what he said. It's I-S-E-C... I-S-H-A. I don't know how to pronounce it. Esikisha?
Is he trying to spell Isaiah?
He has I-S-E-C-I-S-H-A.
Isaiah?
Ezekiel?
Now there is an Ezekiel, but that's not spelled that way. The only parallel world that I could answer something like that about is when Moses was taken up upon Mount Sinai, he was told to build the tent of the congregation, the tabernacle that the Israelites took with them throughout their journey, from the pattern that he saw. So then that goes to speak also from another voice in the book of Hebrews, that Moses saw a pattern, or he saw the true things in heaven, and that what he built, for instance, the tabernacle in the wilderness, and later the Temple of Solomon, which was built off of that, were based upon the pattern of what he saw in the heavens. And the only other thing is that in the book of Hebrews, there is a mention that says something about this world is held together by things which are not seen, and the things which are made of things which are not seen. And it gives you sort of the idea or the reference that there is a spiritual world that's actually creating the world that we actually see.
Now you mentioned about angels traveling all over, back and forth, and they have no boundaries. Well, that to me also is like a ghost or a spirit, does the same thing. They can travel with no boundaries back and forth, and they can be here, and then they can also be somewhere else at the same time.
Well, are you ready for this one?
Go ahead. I'm ready, go.
All right, ghosts or demons. Demons are the spirits, or the disembodied spirits of these Nephilim.
Ghosts are our demons?
That's correct.
All ghosts are demons?
That's correct.
Oh!
Lordy.
I never heard that before. How did you come to that conclusion?
Well, the book of Enoch is very clear on it. It says that these giants, these Nephilim, when they were disembodied because of the flood, they became the evil spirits of today.
Oh my gosh, so when we're doing EVPs and we have communication with spirits, or they're talking to us, they're demons?
That's correct.
Oh my God, really?
That's right. They've been around for thousands and thousands of years, and what they are, they're disembodied.
But wait a minute, okay, but wait a minute, Kim. If an angel can do the same thing, how do we know it's not an angel talking to us?
Well, an angel has a physical, not a physical, well, it could have. An angel has, by nature, a body, which is spiritual. They're powerful, they're very intelligent, and they have no basic need or desire to interact with a person in the same manner that a demon does.
So then what's the purpose of an angel?
Well, an angel's purpose in the beginning, they're called messengers, but they played different parts in creation and so forth. In Genesis, the 6th chapter, we refer to these angels as watchers. It seems that they were given a particular ability or goal, if you would, to watch over mankind.
Isn't there an alien called the Watcher? Isn't there some alien species called Watchers?
Oh, it was also, wasn't it in the book of Enoch about the Watchers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is correct. They're called watchers in the book of Enoch. There's one reference in the book of Daniel where they're called watchers. But an angel, and by the way, I want to mention this too. People are under, in my mind, a misconception at one point, is that they think that all of the angels that were bad, that rebelled, if you would, or called fallen, that this all happened at one time. I do not believe that's so. I think angels have continued to fall all through the eons. But spirits of giants. These were not only, you hold on to your hat on this one, but these Beni Ha Elohim, these sons of God, these angels, mated with women, but Genesis says that all flesh was corrupted. They mated with everything. That's where, if you think about just casually off the top of your head, go to Egypt, think about the Sphinx. Here's a lion or a lion with a man's head. These things actually existed in this earth. These things of mythology had actual roots in reality. Now, you think about a creature like that that becomes disembodied. His spirit is not human. It does not go to heaven. It does not go to hell. It simply walks in the dry places of the earth. And they seek embodiment so that they can work out their passions, which are usually murder and lust and all types of evil things. Because these Nephilim were cannibals, the vampires, werewolves, the myth of werewolves that we talk about today had its root in reality. It was a fallen angel that mated with a wolf. When that thing died, it became disembodied. You can imagine what kind of a foul spirit that is. And we're beginning to see more and more and more of this demonization of things. I mean, just this last week, there were more acts of cannibalism than there had been in the last century.
And why is that?
Well, demons were the original cannibals. It's, these things are horrible. Now, they don't all, demons, I mean, there's a matter of them. I mean, there are countless number of them, and they have all different agendas. But in basic, the giants of antiquity were where we get the word cannibal from. So it's not unusual, or it doesn't strike me as unusual, that we're beginning to see more of that today.
But they're saying these accounts of recent, as they're saying, zombies, has to do with a new drug that's out on the street, and that's what's causing all these people to do this.
Well, I would say that drugs open the door for demonization. Not all of those have been due just to the bath salts. But anytime anybody is doing drugs, alcohol, they let down their guard of their mind, something's going to come in and take over it.
I'm still having a hard time with spirits being demons, because people have seen their relatives, they'll come visit them.
Ask any ghost hunter that you know, and if you've been involved in this any time at all, you know this to be true too. Ask them if, when they've been out looking for these things, if they didn't follow them home.
It doesn't always happen. I've dealt with ghosts my whole life, and it doesn't always happen where they follow them home.
But they do at times.
They do at times, yes.
That's my point.
Okay.
They're demons. If they have the opportunity, if there's a way they can do it, they'll work their evil there and they'll transfer their evil to you.
But, okay, so these ghosts, though, they may follow you home, but they don't do any harm. They don't do anything to you.
It may not appear in the beginning that they do, but given time, they will.
Interesting. I've never heard that before. Because, I mean, Donna and I have been ghost hunting for 30 years. Well, I'm a little
Long
older.
Time.
And we've really never had, I mean, you've run into some bad spirits and stuff, but nothing really, anything bad has ever happened. Okay,
You ever
no.
have sleep paralysis or
No.
problems at night?
Now, I heard that sleep paralysis also related to an alien abduction as well.
It can. It oftentimes is a demonic presence. And it can be even caused by drugs like Ativan, but most often it's a demonic presence. But there are times that there is also an abduction phenomenon involved in it.
You know, I have my niece's husband. He goes up into the country quite a bit. They have, and it's kind of in a remote little area up in the country. And he goes up there all by himself. Now he says he inherited this resort, this place, and he says it's haunted. He said it's haunted by his grandfather. But when he goes to sleep sometimes, he says that he can wake up, but yet he's frozen. He's like paralyzed. And then when I had read this about this paralysis is also related to alien abduction, I'm just wondering if maybe something isn't happening to him with aliens.
Well, it can be. Fallen angels and the demonic are sometimes very hard to distinguish the difference. But if there are, quote, ghost happenings there, then I would say it's fairly likely these are demonic attacks that he's having. You know, these things that throw things around and show up and act out, what you call the poltergeist type of activity.
So poltergeist is demonic as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're going to find people who are suffering with different types of problems when they're also having those things that just don't always show up right away.
So what's the difference, because I've heard you say a few times there's a difference between the fallen angels and demons. What's the difference?
Well, it's like an angel by nature is what it is. It's an angel. It's a spiritual being with a spiritual body with great abilities and powers. Now that angel can be a good angel, or it can be a rebellious angel, a fallen one. And that's what distinguishes those two apart. A demon spirit, on the other hand, is just like a person. Inside of us, we have a spirit, a soul, and a body. Now, we can't actually put our hands on our spiritual nature. But if you've ever seen somebody, for instance, who's lying in a coffin, the first thing that ever comes to your mind is that person ain't home. Whatever made him a person, it's not there anymore. That's the spiritual nature of man. Well, the Nephilim also had a spiritual nature that they inherited from their fathers, the fallen angels. And when their bodies were destroyed, the spiritual nature has walked the earth. The demons. So demons are not the same things as fallen angels. They're very much less powerful. You could have a person who's actually possessed by 1,000 demons. But one fallen angel would not be interested in possessing a body whatsoever. It just would not be something that it would do, or possibly even be capable of doing.
Have you ever been abducted by an alien?
No.
Have you ever had an alien encounter?
No.
Okay. Oh. Well, now what about now?
I have encountered these Nephilim. I have encountered fallen angels. I have encountered good angels.
A good angel.
That's good.
And how did you encounter this good angel?
Which time?
Oh,
Pick a
really?
time.
How many times?
Many times.
Really? And how does that happen?
Well, the first thing that I would say, I've been a Christian since I was 17 years old, and my story sort of started then. I had a high school teacher that would open his Bible in between classes, and I think I was just arrogant enough that maybe I thought I could, catch him up on something, but we won't go there. I'm sure that couldn't have possibly been true. So I began to talk to him, and I realized, in the very instance of what we're talking about, I realized that I had a spiritual nature and that I did not know Christ. So in this conversation, I gave my life, or what we sometimes refer to as my heart, to Christ. And I could tell on the inside of me that spiritual nature changed. And a few minutes later, and I don't know if to tell this story, but I feel like I want to tell it tonight. I don't know that I've told this on the radio before, but as I'm standing there a few minutes later, Jesus comes walking in the room. Now, anytime I've ever shared this with somebody, they ask me, well, what did he look like?
What did he look like?
Well, all I can tell you is this, and I think this is true with most people who truly have an experience with God. All I can tell you is he had 2 feet.
He had 2 feet?
Because that was all I was looking at.
His feet.
In other words, I was on the floor. There was such a tremendous feeling of awe and fearfulness and presence that I wouldn't have dared stood up and tried to look him in the face. It would not have occurred to me.
Wow.
And a lot of times I have people who've asked me, well, did he have long hair, short hair? I couldn't begin to tell you. It was too awe-inspiring.
Okay, so he appeared to you.
Mm-hmm.
And what
He walked through the wall.
He what?
Walked through a wall.
He did?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do you think he was an alien?
No.
So you think he was that?
Jesus.
He was the risen Christ.
Okay, so you think God is God, and God is God, the Lord is the Lord, but you don't think that, because we're Catholic and all these other religions, we call it God and the Lord, and other religions call them, they have other names for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a higher being, but how do we know it's not really an alien?
Let me answer that the way I think I can answer that, and then I can leave you to judge it after that. I was 17 years old, and before he walked into that room and I fell on my knees before him, I had spent probably the last 5 years drinking alcohol at any moment that I could. I was having blackouts by the time I was 17 years old. When I got up off of my knees that day, I no longer had any desire or any problem with alcohol.
But how do you know it was God? How do you know it was just not a higher being that presented himself before you?
Well, because the Bible says that if you call upon the name of the Lord, you shall be saved. I don't think you will call upon the name of Jesus and somebody else is going to show up.
But there are others.
That's highly unlikely.
Okay, but there have been other people that have asked God to come before them, to show himself to them, and to prove that there is a God, but he doesn't do it. Why do you think that is?
I think it's important to understand I wasn't asking him to do that. The times that I've seen angels, with only one exception that I can think of, they're instances of what I would call divine choosing. It wasn't because I asked for it to happen or look for it to happen. It just happened.
But why do you think he appeared to you when he doesn't appear to a lot of other people? Why you?
Well, I asked myself that question for 30 years. I think I'm now beginning to see the answer to that, Norene. And that's one reason I've been quiet about it for all these years. Since I've written the book, an outcropping of this book has been a ministry toward people who are having alien abduction scenarios and sleep paralysis scenarios. I've been getting messages, and I talk with people on the telephone and through Skype all the time that are having demonic activity. They're seeing demons, they're having them come in and out of them, they're seeing orbs, they're seeing men in black. I've talked to dozens of women who are being raped by some force that they can't see in the middle of the night. Men as well, it's not quite as common. And I have been able to talk with these people on the phone, counsel a little bit with them. I have been able to deal directly with these demons and make them leave these people alone. You
have? Now how do you know, have you done, okay, so when you talk to these people, how do you know that they're you know, they might not be mentally stable? They might not be all there.
Well, as the commonality of the things that I hear, I usually work off of an assessment. And some of the questions I ask on the assessment are sort of designed to find out, you know, if that person has a history. You know, I'm not looking to try to, well, you know, I think there's some things like multiple sclerosis, for instance. I wouldn't call that a demon, not at all. If a person has a mental illness, maybe to say that they're bipolar, that's not necessarily something that's a demon.
Is that a question you ask them before you try to help them to find out if they have any of these medical issues?
I do want to know what kind of medical issues they have. I want to know what kind of drugs they're taking.
Do you think that maybe not all of them are truthful with you either?
Well, by the time they finish this assessment, and I've talked with them, let me say this, people don't generally come to me, you know, they have, like this one lady I was talking to, she says, I've been to everybody. I can't get help. I've done everything there is to do. And these things won't leave me alone. You know, that's the kind of people I'm talking to. So it's, and
did she, okay, these things that were bothering this lady, were you able to help her?
Many of them I have been able to. There's some of them that I'm still in the process with. It is not all of the time well, what do I want to say? I've got sort of a system where I'll take in an assessment, I'll talk with those people, then at some point, when I think they're ready, they have the understanding and that they are actually a Christian, then I'll pray with them and I'll deal with these demon spirits. And then I want them to become involved in reading their Bible. I want them to become involved in a fellowship somewhere. And then I follow up with them. I want them to call me every couple of days and tell me how they're doing, what's going on with them. And so it's a process. I try to stay in touch. I try to disciple these people, if you would, is I think a good word, along the route. And I find commonalities. Most people who have these things happen have been involved in something like Ouija boards. They've had different traumas in their life. For instance, one of the ladies I was working with recently, and I think you brought up a good point. It's not so much sometimes that they lie, but they might not tell me everything. And a good example of this was my wife and I, using Skype, we were ministering to this lady. And came time we prayed for her, and I said, okay, let's just wait just a minute. I asked the Lord Jesus to show us if there's anything here that we should pray specifically against or about. And up on the inside of me, which oftentimes I call it intuition, but I'll hear the Lord. And I asked the lady, I said, I keep on the inside of me hearing the word rape. What does that mean to you? Have you ever been raped? I mean, she burst into tears. She said, I had completely forgotten about that, but when I was 15 years old, I think she's 50 now, she says, I was raped.
But Kim, how do you know that that voice was the Lord? How do you know it wasn't a demon? How do you know it wasn't an angel?
Very good question. That it is what I call a subjective experience. So let's subjectively look at the outcome for the answer. So when I said that to her, I had her pray with me about that specifically, and I dealt with the demon that I thought was behind that. And I have been keeping in contact with her months now, and her attacks during the night have completely stopped. They have not reoccurred. So I agree and say, yes, it's subjective, and anybody who tells you they have heard the Lord, or even myself, says that they've seen the Lord, those are subjective experiences. I, for one, I like to put them on the shelf. Let's hold it up here and let's look at what the outcome or the fruit of that is. Because we're all subject to miss it. I mean, I can't sit here and tell you that I might not listen to the wrong voice. It might happen. But if that's the case, it's not going to bear good fruit.
Okay, can I go back for 1 second back here? When that vision came to you, and you said you stopped drinking, did you get any messages from him as well as to what you should be doing, like what you're doing now? Did he tell you to do that?
You know, frankly, nothing has bothered me about that experience except that one question, is that he said absolutely nothing. And I wondered for 30 or 35 years why that was so.
So he just appeared to you and that was it? He didn't say anything?